me put it this way. Let me just ask you this. What is the problem with the United States using drones for warfare?
I'll just reference Sun Tzu in the Art of War. He says that protracted warfare is not beneficial to the state, and he says that our warfare is evil inherently, but if you have to do it, here's how you do it to win. And we're using drones not to win, but to bring devastation and control over an area. So in the art of war, in that philosophy, what we're doing with drones is inherently evil because we're not using them to finish the war and win. If we are, well, we're not even in a war, we're overseas contingency, right? That's what they call it. My own personal reasons for doing it is that we are indiscriminately killing human beings and celebrating it, and then pretty much destroying whatever moral fabric or moral law that we are supposedly fighting for.
I don't think a lot of people understand that drone strikes primarily kill civilians. Is that right?
It's not inherent. Like it's not like they go like, "Oh, this guy's walking his dog. We're gonna fucking kill him." No, it's not. It's not inherently that. It's more like um,
Right.
they're
But bystanding civilians, just
yeah,
as like a consequence of killing one person who lives in a building, they're going to kill.
right. They call it collateral damage, and it's a term that they use to uh, marginalize an individual human's life and just make them a tally mark. Um, I saw a lot of really bad crap while I was in, and I've only really talked about my own experiences and my own sin and shame. But they would really like if there was probably 15 people at a wedding and they were there to strike two. The 15 people were collateral damage worth getting those two people.
So an example would be if some Rambo character whose job was to go overseas and go take out a terrorist target, and this guy is just going through an entire apartment building with his automatic weapons, just
Mhm.
slaying every innocent bystander, all the women and children on his way up to the top floor to find the terrorist, just
Mhm.
murdering dozens of people in this building before
Mhm.
he actually gets the target. This guy would be a war criminal. This guy would be in a
Mhm.
prison somewhere.
Same like President Trump former President Trump um, pardoned four Blackwater dudes for doing that, right? They were basically in downtown Baghdad and were murdering people on the street. And that is essentially what drones do, just in an unpersonal type of way.
Yeah, it's a weird thing where if you just take us out of it, if you remove us from it, it's this weird thing where it's like now it's this bridge that we're able to cross.
In a sense, it's I talk a lot about warrior culture and warrior philosophy because I grew up in a family of wrestlers, right? So like from the moment that I could pretty much walk, I was on or around the wrestling. And in wrestling, you face your opponent. You know, you work hard, you train, you understand your body and how you move, and maybe study the enemy's movement so that you can beat them. With drones, there's no facing your enemy. There's just, you're basically taking people who are incapable of operating on that level of physicality and giving them the ability to glorify war in a way that makes them feel like they're participating. I kind of feel like it's a lot like the QAnon conspiracy crap, where people want to feel involved and like they're doing something for the greater good, or they're part of a movement, but really all it is just indiscriminate violence.
Now, the argument against this would be we're doing this to keep people safe here in America, right?
Right, or boots off the ground. That's another one.
What do you say to that argument?
I say that we devalue the people that are part of the warrior class that dedicate themselves to sacrificing their life for a noble cause, right? In the spiritual world of the warrior, they would talk about how even if you are a noble and good warrior and you're fighting an ignoble cause, what you're doing is a sin. And so we're taking people who, let's compare drones to a sniper, right? A sniper's in country. They're sitting there with their partner. They're monitoring. They're sometimes laying down for days at a time without moving, right? Takes a whole bunch of concentration and skill, like years of training. Well, you're putting that same kind of power within the drone operators, but you're taking young men and women out of high school and giving them the power without the training, and glorifying something that doesn't deserve to be glorified.
Now, isn't another thing that, like, we tell people going to war, going off to fight wars, that they're fighting for a noble cause, they're fighting for freedom. Mm-hmm. But in these regime change wars, and in the history of our wars, they have always been for the acquisition of something, for the acquisition of oil or whatever it might be. But we tell these people, we tell our military, our warriors, they believe that they're fighting for a noble cause. They believe that they're fighting for freedom or for peace.
Have you ever read Lieutenant Colonel David Grossman's On War and On Killing?
No.
So he's got 2 books, On War and On Killing, and On Killing is probably my favorite of the 2 because it talks about the psychological cost of killing in warfare. Mm-hmm. And throughout history, the idea of fighting for a noble cause is given to every group of soldiers that fight, even though we can see through our own lens now that usually that most people die in a very painful way. People cry out for their mothers. But what he says on Killing is that we have to glorify it. A soldier has to glorify and say what he's doing is good in order for him to get past the barriers that prevent him from actually taking the steps necessary. The term that is used is drinking from the waters of the river Lethe, which is in Greek mythology. When you're dead, you have to cross the river Lethe, and it erases all the memories from your past so that you can be reborn again. And Mars, or Ares, the god of war, gives a cup of the river of Lethe to each of the warriors that fight, So we forget the lessons of history and our society, or we're not even taught it. And so we must, we have to, soldiers see their friends and brothers and people die, and they have to say that there's a reason for it. People who lose family in the wartime, they have to say, well, my son or my brother, sister, mother, father sacrificed their life for a noble cause, and it makes them feel better about the loss, the death, right? And without that aspect of it, people would be in despair and people would be up in arms, and righteously they should be up in arms, because if we look at the last 20 years, what have we accomplished at all with our conflicts over in the Middle East and Africa? We've just destabilized the world even more. For what purpose? They want to get rid of Iran because of some sort of control over monetary value of something. It's complete greed. We're not fighting for a noble cause. We're not fighting an enemy. There was a guy who was trained by the CIA who got men to fly planes into, places in the United States. It wasn't a group of people an entire culture. It wasn't a specific country. It was a person trained by the United States military, United States organizations and institutions that eventually turned on the United States and started this whole conflict. You know, if we look at like what happened right before 9/11, the day before 9/11 happened, I think it was Colin Powell was getting on MSNBC and talking about how there's trillions of dollars that are unaccounted for at the Pentagon, and all of a sudden 9/11 happened. If we look at Halliburton and Cheney, they've made trillions of dollars off this war, and we see that our country is in severe debt. You know, our people are in poverty. It's hard to get health care. It's hard to get food. It's hard to get shelter. So we've really just destroyed our entire culture for an emotional reason rather than a logical reason or even a spiritual reason. Like when when I first joined the military, I didn't do so to kill. I joined under the intelligence program. I did so because I was going to get 4 to 6 years, get my education, get out. I didn't intend to join the drone program. I just scored high enough that they just shoved me into it. But when I was joining the military, I asked my family they watched Fox News. They're the typical Republican Christians that don't even think for themselves. But they were saying that we need to go over there. We need to destroy the enemies of God and all that type of stuff. But when I actually joined, they were like, "Oh, you're going to go overseas and get killed. Like, we don't want you to do that." So they were willing to send other people to die. But when it came to a personal sacrifice, that ideal was put in jeopardy. And then once I actually went through the experience and came out and started talking to my family, I was wrong because I was no longer in agreement with their ideology. They still think that we need to be over there. And unfortunately, the Christians that I know still think that we need to be over there killing Muslims because they're the enemies of God. We're not over there for anything else. You know, well, where's the oil? Where's the resources coming back here? Where's the democracy that we went to go stabilize? You know, even if we look at the Kurds who Saddam Hussein was genociding, burying in mass graves, we went over there, and as soon as they're free, they're going up in north into Turkey, north of Mosul, and then we're using our own drones to help kill them with the Turkish military. So we've betrayed our own allies over there, basically our only allies.